this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
This is Andrea Gunning from Betrayal. Most wellness routines fail somewhere between day one motivation and where did I put that powder? That's where Grunes comes in. Grunes packs over 20 vitamins and minerals, greens, and prebiotics into a snack pack of tiny, delicious gummies. No powders, no pills. Just a simple way to support your gut health, beauty, energy, immunity, recovery, and cognition. Plus, the ingredients in Grunes are backed by over 35,000 research publications. It's a convenient, comprehensive formula designed for real life. Get up to 52% off with the code BETRAYAL at Grunes.co. That's code BETRAYAL at GRUNS.co.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. We all have a place of peace that we try to seek out at the end of a long day of work. Maybe go for a walk, take our dog with us, our best friend, clear our mind. That place of safety, that place of peace suddenly explodes and your life comes to the end. Somebody's wielding a knife. They're hovering over you. They're burying the knife into your body over and over and over again. And maybe the last thing you see is your dog dying right before you. That's our case today. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Joining me today is my good friend Jackie Howard, executive producer of Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Jackie, what can you tell us about this case?
Katherine Janness took her dog Bowie for a walk in Atlanta's Piedmont Park. Now, Piedmont Park, to put this in terms where other people who are not from this area can understand, would be like taking a walk in Central Park in New York. Katie went to see her girlfriend, Emma, who was working down the street as a bartender. And there were lots of people out walking their own dogs. This is kind of a typical scene for this Midtown neighborhood. After leaving the bar, Katie continued her walk. After work, Emma went home, but Katie wasn't there. She should have been. She should have been back from the dog walk by then. So Emma started calling Katie's cell phone, but did not get an answer. Then she sent text messages. They also went unanswered. And that's when the worry set in, and Emma went out to look for Katie. Now, obviously, when you're walking a dog, you can go anywhere. So Emma used the Find My iPhone app on Katie's phone. It showed Katie's phone was about 100 yards inside Piedmont Park, which was very close to Katie and Emma's home. Emma thought maybe Katie had dropped the phone, so she went into the park to find it. But what she finds is a very gruesome scene. The first thing she saw was Bowie. Bowie was dead. That is the dog. And it's a pit bull. Not too far away, Emma found Katie's body, and she was dead. This is a very gruesome crime, Joe, that we're going to talk about. But let's talk about the beginning. Bowie and Katie were not found next to each other, but they were found, especially Bowie, at the entrance of the park. There's so much to talk about here, Joe.
Jackie, I got to tell you, as you know, I worked in Atlanta for a long time, and I'm very familiar with Piedmont Park. This is a wide open space, and the area where this young woman was found with her pet is immediately adjacent to one of the main entrances to the park. It's this kind of big arched area that you can walk through that, plainly states Piedmont Park. It's an area where people actually go through on a regular basis to take nice, long, peaceful walks through this area. It's very bucolic, beautiful old trees and this sort of thing, areas to picnic. And the fact that her body is actually found, let's face it, in plain view is quite striking to me. As an investigator, when you begin to look at a scene like this, and trust me, what this young woman went through took time. So that tells us something about the perpetrator. They essentially had no fear of being found, perhaps. Now, some people say, well, that's under the cover of darkness. Yeah, it is under the cover of darkness, but it's not like we're out in a cow pasture in rural Georgia somewhere. We're in one of the most populated cities in the South. People walk through this area. They make it a point to walk through this area. It's very popular. Who would do this in this specific environment? And you begin to think about the nature of the scene, where she was found, where Bowie was found, and you have to think this must have been an absolute bloodbath around this area because there were so many injuries to both Janness's body as well as her pet dog's body that blood would have been spilled on all of the surfaces. And those are some of the things that you have to think about as an investigator. It's an open area. Who would have access to it? Who would have knowledge that she would be walking through this specific area at this time of evening, and who would be bold enough to approach this young woman who, as you mentioned, is walking along with a pit bull at their side. I don't know about you, Jackie, but for me, a person that's got a pit bull in tow is going to be probably one of the last people I'm going to want to try to target, because they're very affectionate when it comes to their master. They are very protective when it comes to their master. So that gives us an insight into who may have perpetrated this.
One of the things that struck me about this show, you were talking about the big sign that goes into Piedmont Park. And on the very bottom of the sign, there is a post that says, pets must be on a leash. So it's not like the pit bull got away and ran after somebody. We know the dog was on a leash to begin with. So we know that the initial attack, the two of them were standing close together.
Yeah, they absolutely would have been standing close together. She's got the dog in tow, or it's like my dogs. My dogs have me in tow. Many times they're excited. They're ready to get out of the house. They want to go for a walk. It's their happy place. So that the dog was right by her side as they're walking along. The dog didn't get away. The dog didn't alert on something, I don't think, and, hopped off the leash magically and ran off to chase somebody that was a threat. That dog would have hung back, if you will, in order to protect Miss Janness. So that's something that, that comes to mind when you're beginning to try to assess the scene out there in this open area. How did they get this much distance between the dog and the dog's master? How does that happen in this environment in the midst of this attack? So, it really gives you pause to think.
So how does this happen, Joe? How do you kill a dog? Now, we do know there was not a gun used in this attack. How do you kill a pit bull with a knife or a stabbing instrument of some kind? I mean, a pit bull is extremely strong. A pit bull can be in protective mode, and we're assuming that that's the case. A pit bull can be vicious. So how was the perpetrator able to do this? And do they do autopsies on dogs?
In answer to your question, Jackie, yeah, they do. They do examinations on dogs. Now, in this particular case, from my understanding, at least at this point, Bowie's body did not go to the medical examiner's office, for instance, there in the city of Atlanta. The dog's body was actually taken by the state investigative agency, the GBI. And I would probably put money on it that they would have a consulting veterinarian, perhaps, as well as a forensic pathologist out at the state medical examiner's lab to take a look at the dog's injuries. And this is important because, listen, the dog and Miss Janness were not killed in two separate instances. This is all one big event that's taking place. So from an evidentiary standpoint, one of the things that you're going to be looking for when it comes to injuries, you want to be able to try to compare the injuries that the dog had to those that Miss Janness sustained. Is it the same knife? That's the big question here, right? Because we do know that this is a sharp force injury death. So, some of the things that you're going to be looking for on Bowie's body, for instance, is this a single-edged weapon? Or was it a double-edged weapon? Was it a particular type of knife that was used? Say, for instance, something that had a smooth edge as opposed to, say, for instance, a serrated edge, which sometimes you can have a combination of both, and it leaves very, very distinctive markings that can be examined after the fact and possibly compared, certainly at a microscopic level. And there again, you've got this connectivity in forensic science that we are always looking for. In a case like this, we have two victims.
And we would have to be looking for DNA in the dog's mouth because most likely the dog went on an attack. So that we'd be looking for evidence from a dog bite.
Oh, you're absolutely right. One of the things that you would look for is, you'd mentioned DNA, Jackie, but let's keep in mind, how does a dog attack? Well, when a dog attacks, they bite and they rip. I want everybody to think about just for a second, and this is kind of a little indwelling lesson here. People are familiar with the two pointy teeth that you have on the top and on the bottom. These are actually referred to as canine teeth. And the way biting actually works is that these teeth are sunk into, say, for instance, tissue. When a dog bites, it doesn't chew. The dog bites and it rips. So you're not just going to be looking at a molecular level for DNA that, you might can swab Bowie's mouth for, but you're also going to be looking for things like tissue that might be caught up in the teeth, or maybe even fabric that's caught up in the teeth. And these things would actually be left behind. Keep in mind, I cannot imagine in my wildest fantasies that the perpetrator would have taken time to go back and clean the dog's mouth out. There would be something there if, in fact, the dog did attack this potential perpetrator. And again, this begs the question, a dog that is so prone to a defensive posture and a protection posture, like a pit bull, how do you get so close to them that you can actually drive a knife, not just once, but multiple times into this canine's body? And while this is going on, what's Miss Janness doing? Is she already deceased, or is she looking on in horror?
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Jackie, we've had a little discussion about the nature of this environment in which this poor woman was just brutally attacked along with her pet dog, Bowie. But we need to talk a little bit now, as hard as it is. We've got to talk about these injuries, because I got to tell you, Jackie, in my career, I've seen very few cases that even rival this one.
Katie Janness was found about 100 yards inside the park and about 100 feet from Bowie, her dog. The suggestion is that from where Bowie was found and where Miss Janness was found, that likely Katie Janness tried to run away and the killer caught up to her. And we do know that she died from, as we've talked about, sharp force injuries. Where were those injuries and what kind of damage do they do?
Jackie, I've actually got the autopsy report here laying before me as you and I are chatting right now. And I've spent the past few days just going over it, and I got to tell you, it's extensive. I mean, absolutely awash with details about what she went through. And, we'll try to take this from the top and just walk through this very carefully. She's got, like I'd said previously, these are what are referred to as sharp force injuries. Now, sharp force injuries, just so our audience understands, is it's anything that involves an edged weapon. And that can either be a stab wound, and stabs, keep in mind, are deeper than they are long. And then you have incised wounds, which are, just think of them as slices, and they're generally shallow. Okay. So with Miss Janness's body, we have to think about, first off, how can somebody get so close to her in order to facilitate this? Because there were so many injuries. Was somebody laying in wait for her as she walked through this gate or through this archway at Piedmont Park, kind of tracking her along? And there's such a level of trauma here that it's hard to kind of take its measure. I think that one of the things that really stood out to me was the fact that I don't normally use this term, but there is an attempt, at least on my part, at least from my perspective as a medical legal death investigator, an attempt to disfigure Miss Janness. And kind of let me lay the groundwork here. She's got a lot of injuries over the totality of her torso, but what's really striking is that her face, and these are all, if you think about the head, we have the front, which is referred to as the anterior. These are all anterior injuries, and they start actually at the forehead. There's even one, I think, that goes to the very top of the head. They go all the way to the top, slice through the forehead, across the surface of both eyes. Both eyelids are involved. Just keep that in mind. The lips are actually incised. Remember, we talked about an incised wound. That's a cut. That's a slice all the way down to the chin. And there are multiple of these. So it's almost like somebody is in a fevered state as they are attempting to disfigure her, slice her up, and really make her into this grotesque person in death. And you really have to think about, I think to a great degree, what's going on inside the mind of a perpetrator in a case like this.
What you're describing to me, Joe, sounds like a slasher film.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it, Jackie? You begin to think about it. And to give our audience a little understanding of this, one of these injuries that really stood out to me, obviously the slicing of the eyes is significant, or the eyelids. One of the things that really kind of stuck with me is that the forensic pathologist talks about the slice injury to the mouth goes down to the buccal mucosa. Remember, we've heard that term before. That's actually where we go and harvest DNA out of the living with swabs. That means that not only was the lip sliced through, it goes through what's referred to in forensic terms as it's a full thickness wound, which means it goes all the way down to underlying tissue. So you've sliced through the lip at this point in time. That gives you an idea as to what has happened. And one other interesting component is that as you work your way down from these injuries on the head, and I'm not suggesting in any way that this is the order in which they took place, but if we're because there's so many injuries here, if we kind of think about this anatomically, if you start with the head, after we have examined all of these injuries on the head, you have to begin to think about, the neck, what's involved with the neck. Oh my gosh, it's remarkable. If you think about the right side of your neck, starting essentially directly below your right ear, there is an incised injury that runs, again, this is what's referred to as full thickness injury. It goes down through the subcu fat into the vessels and into the muscle. Did you know that Miss Janness, both of her carotid arteries, which are the main blood supply that goes from the heart to the brain, both of those were sliced through. And that's at a depth of over an inch beneath the surface of your neck tissue. You're getting down, close to probably 2 inches in thickness. You're going down there. And not only that, but her trachea, her windpipe essentially, is what the doctor refers to as transected. These vessels are transected. The windpipe is transected, going all the way down to the cervical vertebra. So the supports for the head from a skeletal standpoint, that's becoming involved now. You've even got on the backside of her neck, the skeletal attachments, the muscle skeletal attachments back there, Jackie. The muscles were sliced as well. That's at like the C2, C3 level of the vertebra. So those are really high up in the neck, and those have also been cut away. And what's really ghastly about this is the fact that in those muscles on the back of the neck, they found hemorrhage. And guess what? When you find hemorrhage, that's an indication that the heart's still beating.
We know that she had over 50 wounds. This is taking some time and some effort.
Yeah, it does take time, Jackie. When I started reading this autopsy report, I began to think about all of those years I spent working in the morgue as an autopsy assistant. And let's face it, we're just going to be adults here and talk about this. I spent that time prosecting human cadavers. And it would, of course, we were very purposeful in what we would do. But, autopsies many times involve sharp instruments. That's what we do. And it would take, 2 hours sometimes. We're talking about a tremendous number of sharp force injuries that have taken place in an open space out on the bare earth, if you will, in plain view, mind you. Though it is at night, it's still in plain view. These are taking place out there. So was this a frenzied event? Or was she somehow removed somewhere else, maybe undercover, and all of this stuff was done to her? But you can't get past the fact that this was facilitated by an individual that had to take a significant amount of time. You can say frenzy, we can apply that term, but still it doesn't necessarily mean that it happened over a very short period of time. This knife was buried into her body every single time. And remember, every time a knife is buried, it takes effort on the part of the perpetrator to pull it out. You know, you talked about the stab wounds that she had on her back. She had a stab wound so deep on her back. And, you know, I like to teach my students that that when you think about an attack from the rear, people kind of contract up into almost like a turtle shell. The back is hard to get through. This knife was buried into her back so deeply that it actually punctured one of her lungs posteriorly, which means from behind. And here's the kicker. One of the wounds actually penetrated her aorta, which is the main vessel that comes off of the heart that supplies blood to the rest of the body. And you know what I know about this? I know that she was alive when this was happening because her left chest, where her left lung is and the aorta, had begun to fill up with blood. That means that the heart is still beating at this point. And what's very important here, when you begin to try to put this together from a forensic pathology standpoint, and you begin to think about what's referred to as sequencing of injuries, because everybody wants to know, you know, what was the fatal blow that brought about her death at the end of the day, and how much of the stuff that was going on, this trauma, was it antemortem or was it postmortem? And that means staying around with the body after an individual is deceased to continue to slice and cut and stab and all of these things that are involved. And she's even got, you know, and we haven't even mentioned contusion. She's got multiple blunt force contusions. So she was struck in some way or struck with something. We don't know what that was, whether it was a hand or a fist or some object, but she does have multiple, you know, that's a lot of activity going on in a case like this, Jackie.
So, Joe, what does it tell us about the weapon? What you were just talking about, that she was stabbed so deep that it cut the aorta around the heart. What does that tell us about the size or the possible size of the weapon?
I think probably one of the most significant things about this weapon, Jackie, I think a lot of people want to think about things like the length of the blade. That's important. Okay, that is certainly important. It's certainly something that we consider. But you know, what really fascinates me about this weapon is that this weapon would have had to have been sturdy. That is, the backside of that weapon, if it's a single edged blade, just, you know, if you have an opportunity to go into your kitchen or whatever and look at the knives you have in your drawer, if you take out like an old butter knife or even a steak knife that you've picked up at the store, they're not really robust. They have specific edges on them, and the back is not very robust. But if you find a butcher knife, like a substantial butcher knife, there's going to be a thickness that occurs on the back of this. And the reason this is important to me, remember what I said about stabbing her in her posterior chest, her back. You're going to have to be able to generate so much force, not just once, not just twice, but we're talking about 50 injuries, Jackie. So that means that blade would have had to have been strong enough to endure this frenetic slicing and stabbing over and over and over again, unless the perpetrator showed up with multiple edged weapons. And one more thing that you have to consider about this, these are very specific injuries. Okay. You know, one of the reasons we sharpen knives, you know, some people have sharpeners at home. One of the reasons we do that is because you lose your edge. You know, after a period of time, you slice things over and over and over again in the kitchen. You have to resharpen that knife, or it's not worth anything. How is it that this knife, you can still continue to use this time after time after time? So I would think that would be a good indicator from a forensic standpoint as to how well the knife was sharpened, the quality of the blade, that it's being utilized. Because as these injuries go on, the nature of the injuries is going to become more blunted, if you will. You might see more hemorrhage associated with it because the edge is not there as it was the first time that you put the edge of that knife to Miss Janness's body. The last one is going to be particularly difficult to enter into her body with because the edge is gone on the weapon at that point in time, or it's not the same as it was when you actually started.
Joe, knowing what you've taught me about blood and how it comes from the body while the heart is still pumping. We have 2 victims here, a dog and a woman. This perpetrator is going to be covered, literally covered in blood. How does a person just walk away and not be seen covered in blood?
I've thought about this. This is one of the very compelling points about this case, because you're going to have human blood and canine blood, which in forensic parlance that's what we refer to as commingling of blood. You can't get past that. And I don't like to, maybe I'm being too melodramatic, but I don't like to use the term covered in blood. I like to use the term bathed in blood, almost painted in blood, because you've got Bowie's blood and Miss Janness's blood commingled, and it would be covering certainly the hands, the arms. If any of the arteries are clipped on either one of the victims, you might have arterial spray. So that means if you clip an artery as the heart is pumping, blood will be not just gushing out, it'll be spraying out onto the individual. You can't escape that. That's going to be happening. So you might have, if the perpetrator is in a dominant position, not only going to have blood up and down their arms, think about the area beneath their neck. Think about the area over their chest. Maybe they've got clothing on. It's going to be covered in this area, almost like they've been painted with blood all over them.
So how much blood are we actually talking about here, Joe? You're saying nicking an artery. How much blood are we talking about?
Well, you got to think, Jackie, that Miss Janness's body and the dog's body are not going to be completely drained of blood. There will still be blood there. Now, I can't tell you the volume of blood that a dog has, but I can tell you with a human being, we're looking at potentially somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2 gallons. That's the totality of blood that a human being has on board. You have to think that at least probably, I don't know, half a gallon of blood would have been spilled. If you've got, and it's not just one artery, Jackie, you've got multiple arteries that are probably being clipped. I mean, let's face it, both of the carotid arteries were clipped in this case. And the fact that you have to go into, remember what I said earlier about the lung being punctured and the chest is filling up with blood. We think while the heart is beating, one of the things that happens with that is that you have what's referred to as regurgitation of blood. If a lung gets clipped, so you have an individual that's actually forcing blood out of their airway, it's just a natural response to try to clear the airway. So they're coughing and they're spraying blood out. So you would have to account for that as well. It would be hard to do the calculus simply, trying to think about how much blood would be at the scene, but I can tell you it would be a substantial amount.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Hi, I'm Cindy Crawford, and I'm the founder of Meaningful Beauty. Well, I don't know about you, but I never liked being told, oh, wow, you look so good for your age. Why even bother saying that? Why don't you just say you look great at any age, every age? That's what Meaningful Beauty is all about. We create products that make you feel confident in your skin at the age you are now.
Meaningful Beauty. Beautiful skin at every age. Learn more at meaningfulbeauty.com.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Jackie, as horrible as these injuries are that we're describing right now, there's one piece to this that we still have yet to cover, and it might be, to many of our listeners, one of the most shocking things that any of us have ever heard.
It is, Joe. We have learned through the forensic information and the autopsy that Miss Janness's body was extremely mutilated. You talked about the damage that had been done to her face, but we know that her body was mutilated and carved. Letters were carved into this woman's abdomen, Joe.
Yeah, and I've had cases that are kind of similar to this, but I don't think anything that's this over the top. There were letters carved into her body. I want to back up just for a second and also make note of the fact that not only were letters carved into her body. Remember how I talked about that there was great facial disfiguration. In addition to that, her left breast, the nipple of her left breast has been severely disfigured as well, sliced, if you will, down to the subcutaneous fat area. So that's again a full thickness injury. And I hate the word why, but as an investigator, sometimes you have to go there with that. You have to try to understand why specifically would you target that particular area of the body. And I think that's pretty obvious. Many people will say that there is a sexual connotation there, that there is an attempt to disfigure an individual when you attack their sexual being, if you will. And in this case, her breast was essentially mutilated. But if that was not bad enough, Miss Janness also had the letters F-A-T carved into her lower chest and into her abdomen. This injury is extensive. The letters F and A are essentially to the right of the midline, which is the middle of the body, and they kind of involve the midline as well. Someone took the time to take the tip of that knife. Remember the knife that we've talked about extensively that I believe is kind of robust, it's kind of sturdy, and take the tip of that knife and go down just shy of an inch for the letters F and A, dragging that tip through the tissue down to the bone, if you will, and kind of laying out these letters side by side. But then as you cross over the midline, you get to the letter T. They took more time with this, Jackie. The incised area that involved the letter T went down even deeper almost like they were taking more time, to kind of put their stamp on this in finality. Can you imagine taking that knife and dragging it across to do the crossbar on the T and then down? And these letters are several inches in length and width. And it goes to this factor of time. Who in their right mind, and I think that's a valid question here, right mind, would have taken the time to do something so grotesque to this young woman in this environment where they could, just plainly be seen. And then it's kind of in final with her body. If I just want folks to really picture this so that you can understand what has happened. If you will go, everybody has a sternum. It's that solid flat bone that's right in the center of your chest. If you'll go to the base of your sternum, there's a little area down there that's called the xiphoid process. It's kind of a little cartilaginous body. It's the terminus, if you will, of your breastbone. Move from there all the way down to your pubic bone. Miss Janness was actually sliced from that point at the xiphoid all the way down to her pubis. And this injury went so deep, Jackie, that loops of her intestines or bowels were actually hanging out. And again, this is really hard to hear, I know. But in the report of the forensic pathologist, the pathologist actually noted that there was hemorrhage in the bowel. And that gives you an indication. She might not have had an awareness of it, but her heart was beating. Remember, we're not necessarily going to hemorrhage if our heart is not beating. And so that really paints this horrible picture of what this young woman went through.
So are you telling me, Joe, that she was still alive when this happened?
Yeah, I think that we can look back on a lot of these injuries and say that she had at least some kind of level of awareness of what was happening. A lot of these injuries that have been noted over the course of her body have areas of hemorrhage, and some of these things are going to be post-mortem. The physician doesn't go into great detail, but the detail that this individual does go into relative to these injuries, there are any number of them where there was, in fact, hemorrhage involving these insults or injuries. Remember, let's think back to what I said about the hemorrhage in the neck relative to these muscles that are adjacent to the cervical spine, these skeletal support muscles. And then the pathologist makes note of these hemorrhagic areas in the bowel. I mean, can any of us imagine? I mean, these are areas that you get into that when you're undergoing surgery, you have anesthesia that's being applied to you so that there is no awareness whatsoever. With Miss Janness, she would have had an awareness of what was being done to her, at least for some time. We can only hope that mercifully, maybe she lost consciousness, and I think that she probably did. But in the meantime, she was just utterly and totally ripped to shreds in this case.
We know with the injuries that she sustained, there was particular mutilation damage to the tattoo area on her back, to her breast, to her face. I know you're not a psychologist, Joe, but you've been studying forensics for a very long time. Does this say to us that this was as much as a psychological, a torturous attack as it was just a physical frenzy?
Yeah, this goes deep down into psychopathology, because when you try to, I mean, let's face it, when we meet friends and loved ones, the first thing we notice about them are going to be their faces, right? It's that identifier that we have as human beings. We look into their eyes, we speak to them. What was destroyed on her? Well, her eyelids were sliced, her mouth was cut open down to the fatty layer. And then you're going to mutilate a breast. These things are specific identifiers that identify our humanity, right? Who we are as people. The tattoo is significant because that's something that she would have had to have paid someone, and after she had picked this design out, that was unique to her, that she loved, she loved it to the point where she's walking around with it every day. Why would you go to the point to try to destroy that. Well, I submit, and again, like you said, I'm no psychologist, but I've been around a lot of cases where people have been ripped to shreds. And when you go after their specific identity, when you try to rob them of their individual person, that says a lot about the perpetrator, I think. The question that we have to ask is, how would you even begin to measure this level of rage? And I think to a great degree, hatred, in order to just absolutely rip this young woman to shreds. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Janice Torres here.
And I'm Austin Hankwitz. We host the podcast Mind the Business, Small Business Success Stories, produced by Ruby Studio in partnership with Intuit QuickBooks.
We're back for season 4 to talk to some incredible small business owners.
The big thing about working in tech is that it's ever evolving, ever changing. Everyone's a rookie. That's how fast the industry is changing. So what I'm really excited about is to be part of that change.
So listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Andrea Gunning from Betrayal. Most wellness routines fail somewhere between day one motivation and where did I put that powder? That's where Grüns comes in. Grüns packs over 20 vitamins and minerals, greens, and prebiotics into a snack pack of tiny, delicious gummies. No powders, no pills. Just a simple way to support your gut health, beauty, energy, immunity, recovery, and cognition. Plus, the ingredients in Grüns are backed by over 35,000 research publications. It's a convenient, comprehensive formula designed for real life. Get up to 52% off with the code BETRAYAL at Grüns.co. That's code BETRAYAL at GRUNS.co.
Are you a fraud-paying American? 1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has been a victim of identity fraud. With LifeLock, if your identity is stolen, they fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Last year, billions in refunds were stolen. Could be from your salary, overtime, or second job. Gone. But this year, you don't need to stay a victim, because this tax season, fraud-paying American is something no American should have to claim. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
Owning a home is full of surprises. Some wonderful, some not so much. And when something breaks, it can feel like the whole day unravels. That's why HomeServe exists. For as little as $4.99 a month, you'll always have someone to call. A trusted professional ready to help, bringing peace of mind to 4.5 million homeowners nationwide. For plans starting at just $4.99 a month, go to HomeServe.com. That's HomeServe.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.